Hello, creators! Thank you for joining me, and welcome to the Art Part with Miss Colleen. Today we're going to be exploring a little bit more the art element known as shape. When we talk about shape in art, we generally define shape as falling into two distinct categories. And we're going to be exploring those categories in our artworks today. We define shapes as either geometric shapes or organic shapes. Geometric shapes are what the name implies. These are triangles, circles, squares, shapes that are defined in mathematics and have common names, whereas organic shapes are any other shapes that you might find in a work of art with any type of line, any type of closure. These are shapes that are individual creations of the artist and have no names, no defined angles, and no standards for how they should look. So today, we are going to try a couple of different exercises. The materials that you're going to need are 2 pieces of paper, any kind of paper will do, and a pencil, and some crayons, or colors of any kind, really. You're going to grab your first piece of paper to get started, and divide it into 4 sections, just so that you have 4 different spaces to do a few different exercises. So I'm going to use my pencil, draw a couple of lines right down the middle, in either direction so that I have 4 different spaces to keep separate for my different exercises I'm about to do. I'm going to use some geometric shapes to explore how those shapes can illustrate different animals. So let's start with picking any color. I'll start with, I think, a blue. We're going to start in this quadrant up here, this rectangle of space, to our first exploration of shape in an animal. So if you'll follow along with me, let's draw an oval, just right smack in the middle there. This is a very common way for that I have used and many have used to learn how to draw something new, especially a shape like an animal or a human or anything really. So we have our oval, gonna add just a circle on top of that. I'm going to add 3 triangles right along the back of the oval here. So go ahead and take your time, however much time you need. But we're going to do a big old skinny triangle there, and a slightly shorter triangle next to it, and a little triangle coming out the back side there. We have our 3 triangles. Next, I'm going to do a rectangle right down here. We have our rectangle. I'm going to follow it up with 2 lines coming out from the bottom of the oval. And from the bottom of each of those lines, a triangle with the point at the bottom of the line. And maybe another triangle right here. So you can already kind of see, oh, I forgot something important. I'm going to add another triangle right up here at that circle. You can already kind of see how this can represent an animal that you might be familiar with. And right there we have the beginnings of a representation of a bird with just those geometric shapes. Nothing else. You can already kind of see the suggestion of a bird. Let's move on to our second workspace over here. Let's pick a new color. I think I'll go with, how about a green? You can use whatever color you like. We're going to do a couple of similar shapes, but we're going to stick with all circles and ovals on this one. So I'm going to start with a medium-sized circle right up here. Do another circle a little bit smaller, right, sort of under it and to the left. And then continuing down in this direction, I'm going to do a great big circle right there. Next, I think I'll follow it with a couple of nice long ovals at the top of this circle. Long ovals, long skinny ovals, just like that. I'm going to do a long oval down here below the bottom circle. I'm going to do a couple of little circles coming off of this middle circle here, right about like that. One there, maybe another one here. I'm going to come back up to this big circle and add a little overlapping circle right there. doesn't have to be perfect. I know I'm probably going a little bit fast, but doesn't have to be anything perfect at all. We're just drawing some shapes. And I'm gonna add down here by the bottom another nice big circle. So you might start to have an idea based on a couple of features what this animal could be. I'm gonna add, I think maybe if we just add another oval right here, that might give it a little bit more definition there too. We're gonna come down to our third workspace right over here. I'm gonna pick a red-orange for this. We're gonna draw my favorite animal. We're gonna start with a triangle with the flat part on top, coming down to a point. Followed up with two little triangles on top on either side. Triangle there. Let's do an overlapping oval. Let's make it a circle. A circle overlapping the bottom of that triangle there. And then a bigger circle underneath that one. Let's do an oval on either side of this big circle, but overlapping a little bit. And one over here, overlapping oval. There we go. Let's do an oval two ovals down there too. So one here and one here, sort of coming off at a diagonal angle. Another one over here. Let's do two little ovals in the middle, one here and one here. And we'll connect those to a couple of long rectangles. Long rectangles. Like I said, doesn't have to be anything perfect. We're just drawing some shapes. Now, you might be able to recognize a few different shapes, creating a few familiar animals in these drawings. Why don't we use our last? Well, before we do that, let's give these animals a little bit more definition. Now, if you just look at this right here, this could be finished. If you wanted it to be, you could represent these different animal shapes with just these geometric shapes. Or if you wanted to mix in some organic shapes, they could be a little bit more recognizable. It just depends on the style that you're going for in your piece of art. But just to explore those organic shapes a little bit more, let's give each of these animals a little bit more definition. I'm going to take that same blue, come back up here, and let's start with these triangles up here, if you'd like to follow along. Let's make these triangles a little bit more curvy, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit curved on the sides. And we can start to see, maybe we'll add a couple more down here, a couple of curved little curvies. And it starts to look a little bit more like a wing. If we come down here to our rectangle, maybe we can make that a little bit wider and curved on the bottom of the rectangle there. And maybe we'll give it a couple of little curvy scallops, little ovals down there, connected back up. Now, if we look at these two shapes, the circle and the oval, they're not actually connected. We can use our imagination when we look at just the geometric shapes. But we could also, if we wanted to mix in those organic shapes, come up here, maybe do a little curved line to connect back there, and one on the other side, so that we have that connection between the head and the body. And maybe this head is a little bit too much like a circle if we're going for that more realistic look. So maybe we can make it a little bit flatter at the front. And we know that these have a familiar look, but maybe we want to, if we mix in those organic shapes, we could make it a little bit rounder, especially at the top. We'll make a nice wide top coming down to that point. Wide and curved, and we'll do the same over here. I'm gonna widen, give it a little curve. Wider and curved, coming down to this point. And let's make these triangles into individual toes. So we'll do a line at the top of the triangle, maybe a line in the middle, and we'll emphasize that line at the bottom. Do the same on this side, a line there, one in the middle, one at the bottom. And you know what, we can even add a line coming off the back to give it that back toe. We can start to see this giving a little bit more of a realistic shape, a little bit closer to what we see in nature. In fact, let's add a little beady eye right on there. We see that the more organic shapes, the more details, organic shape details that we add, the more it begins to resemble the shape that we see in nature. Let's go on to our second shape, right over here, and we'll mix in a few more organic shapes with this one too. Let's start with, how about that neck? Connect the head to the start of the body. Do a little curved shape back there, and another one right here, and we're staying sort of on the outsides of those two, just curving in just a little bit. Don't want to make that neck too skinny. Just for what we're going for here. We're going to connect these two circles. We don't really want to do a curved in because that's going to be a little bit too curvy, although it could be your style. But I think for this one, I'm going to do a little bit of an out curve, just a very slight curve there. And maybe just a little in curve right here. Next, we have these two circles just out here a little bit on their own. Let's maybe connect those with a little bit of a curvy line down and then up to the body. And maybe another one. Make these a little bit narrow right there. We'll do the same with this one. And curve like that. Let's come up. This begins to suggest that it might be a nose, but it still kind of looks like a circle. So if we add a little, let's add a little V right in the middle of that circle. And that V, I would call that a geometric shape, so perhaps we could have added it earlier, but it gives us a little bit more of that detail. Then maybe we add a few curvy lines coming off the sides, maybe 3 on each side of that circle. And let's give a little bit more definition to these long ovals up here. Maybe a little bit of a line on the inside. It starts in the middle and sort of comes out to that edge. Do that on this side too. There we go. Let's add a little bit of an eye on this guy too. Starts to give us a little bit more of an idea of who this might be, what this might be. And if we come down here, we have these long ovals just hanging out down here. We're gonna add a couple of, how about a couple of legs, just to make them really feel connected to the rest of the body. We'll do start a line somewhere in the top of this circle that curves, comes around, attaches right there. Doesn't have to be perfect, just a big curvy line that comes down to the top of that oval. And we'll do the same thing over here, starting at the, what I would call the tummy of this little fella. Curves down, connects to the top of that oval. Just a nice curvy line there. we're starting to see a little bit more definition. We mix in a few organic shapes and it becomes a little bit more recognizable. Or I suppose it was recognizable before, a little bit more realistic, I would say. So we'll come down here to our third drawing. I'll grab that red-orange. And we'll do a few different things here. So we have all of our shapes kind of clustered closer together than we did in the previous drawings. So what we're going to do is add some more specific organic shapes. I'm going to start by, I think I'm going to start by rounding this head a little bit. Make it nice and round on either side. It's not such a hard line. And then we're going to come down. I'm going to connect this top circle to this lower circle with a couple of those curved lines like we did before. I think we'll make them just curve in very slightly. A little bit of a curve in. Same thing on the other side. A little bit of a curve in. A lot of the neck would be hidden behind this triangle here, so we can't really draw that. But what we can do for this fella, we can add some tufts of fur that are going to make it look a little bit more like what we might, a little bit more realistic, what we might see out in the world. I'm going to start by doing just some slightly curved little almost triangles, slightly curved, that come off of the sides of the head. Maybe another one over here, like that, and like that. So we start to see his fur coming off of the sides of his face or his neck. And the more that we do that, maybe we'll add a couple of tufts, maybe just one or two coming off of these long ovals, so that they look a little bit more like knees, a bit more like those hind legs. Maybe just a couple little ones over here. Little ones. Now we see these long ovals are not exactly connected to those ones, so maybe we want to add a couple more of those lines. Little curved lines. So as we are adding all these little details, we start to add some organic shapes that are not the same as our geometric shapes. If we look at this leg as a whole leg, I'll pick a different color to sort of emphasize. If we look at this leg as a whole shape, we have a little bit of a point right there, another point, another curve here, but then it curves around and it curves back and it comes up like this. That shape around the leg, that is an organic shape, even though it was made up of geometric shapes. So we can go on like that as much as we feel we want to for our piece. I think I'll add a couple of tufts up here and maybe a little bit of a hair inside the ears. I think I'll come down, put an eye right there. Maybe another eye right there. Put a little nose there. It's a nice geometric shape. Noses are often fairly geometric. They're triangles or circles. Yeah, I mean, I could go on all day adding little tufts of hair to this guy, but we should move on. So take a couple of minutes and think of what animal you might like to do for your last workspace on this page. I already did my favorite animal. Oh, he doesn't have a tail. I should add a tail. A tail is a very good example of an organic shape. A tail would be somewhat, especially a fox tail, would be somewhat difficult to do as a geometric shape. There are certainly ways that you could do it. But I think I'll make this an example of an organic shape. And we'll imagine it comes off right there. Maybe it comes out this side. Do a nice big curve. And right over on this side. And like that. And I'll do a little tail tip. So you could probably find ways in your drawing to represent your favorite animal in geometric shapes, and maybe you'd like to mix in some organic shapes as well. So why don't we take a moment? You can choose whatever animal you like, as long as you can imagine a way to represent it using geometric and organic shapes. And I will think of a new animal to do for my fourth space as you go ahead and explore that on your work, on your artwork. I think I'm gonna try to do a snake over here, because that seems like a nice challenge. I think a snake has a triangle head. You could do a snake with me if you like, or you can do something completely different on your own exploration. I think a snake starts with a triangle head. And I think it has a forked tongue. That's more a line than a shape, but I'm going to include it there. I think it has a rattle. Is a rattlesnake. So he's going to have a rattle made out of some rectangles. Getting smaller with a little pointy end. Now I think for the body, I'm gonna make it an organic curvy shape. We'll start here, curve around like this, and come up to the tail. And then the same on the other side. And like that. Come around. There we go. So I've already got a mix of geometric and organic shapes. This is definitely a shape that is individual creation of the artist. But I think maybe I will mix in some geometric shapes on the rattlesnake's back, because some rattlesnakes are called diamondbacks. They have a diamond pattern on the back, so I'll include some diamonds. You go ahead, keep exploring, whether you're doing a snake like me, or maybe you picked a koala, maybe you picked an egret, maybe you picked an armadillo, maybe you picked a zebra. All sorts of fun exploration to be had in the animal kingdom. There we go. We come around to his tail, and the diamonds get really tiny. Now I think I'd like to include, I'd like to give him a couple of eyes. Maybe some kind of sideways eyes. And I think I will smooth out connection from his head to his body. There we go. Make it a little bit rounder. And there we go. Now, if you were doing this in pencil, which you absolutely could, for your future creations, you'd have the option of erasing some of those more geometric lines if you were going for a more organic shape, or you could leave them in and they could remain part of your artwork, just like we're doing here with crayon. It is entirely your choice. So there we go. We have a few of our our geometric and organic friends, giving us a contrast between the two different types of shapes that we are using. I hope that you have enjoyed this exploration of what shape can do in your artwork, and I hope that this exploration has given you some new ideas for how you can use geometric and organic shapes in your artwork in the future. And as always, remember to keep creating and keep sharing. See you next time.